Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at the high-grade Guel's Dilanza, the 4th release from the Witch from Mercury, a line that has been absolutely fantastic so far. As usual, this right here I got from Hobby Link Japan, you can too, so the link will be down there in the description. Now let's jump right into it. So jumping into the unboxing and the build, and once again we've got that absolutely phenomenal box art. This might be my favorite high-grade line when it comes to the actual art in the box. On the sides we've got all the info of what we're going to be seeing inside of this. On cracking it open, in here we've got 4 runners in total, that is not including the effect parts in here, so 5 in total with those effect parts. The colors in here, as you'd expect, are absolutely off the wall. We've got that crazy pink that reminds me of the Love Phantom we would have seen back in the Build Divers days. A multicolored runner that includes some phenomenal turquoise, and this whole thing is completely ridiculous looking. So once again, this is a completely no polycap build. If you're new to Gunpla and don't know exactly what that is, older high grades had these rubbery joint caps that held them together. It did keep them all fairly compatible with each other, but they could be a little bit squishy and sometimes not the greatest over time, and sometimes pretty good over time. Bit of a mixed bag. This kit is plastic on plastic throughout. Now, I will mention this line has been absolutely phenomenal when it comes to the build strength, and the overall finished products thus far, and the same is here to a degree. This just isn't quite as fancy as we would have seen with the Gundams. This builds up perfectly, feels great, and looks great, but I will mention there is a couple of things worth considering here. First off, this does not have a full inner frame like we were seeing with the Gundams. They've pretty much got a full inner frame inside of them, and you build the armor onto that. This isn't the case here, as you'd kind of expect with a non-main or non-Gundam kit. One thing I noticed straight away, and this is generally the case when it comes to plastics as vivid as the red in here. This marks, and it marks a lot. So even if you're careful snipping this off twice from the runners, you're still going to get some ridiculous stress marks and different kinds of scratches and whatnot on the surface. This is a hard one to clean up, so you're gonna have to take a lot of care. It's also a glossy plastic, so if you do use some sanding boards or something like that to clean it up, you will still get a lot of scratching. Now, this is one of those kits that I highly recommend Gun Primer's tools for. I used nothing on this particular leg besides just a nipper, and I got a lot of stress marks. So on the second leg, I decided to bust out the Racer Pro, which is a glass file which pretty much will make sure you've got no nubs anywhere and leaves a glossy surface. If it's too glossy, there's the balancers too to sort it all out. So if you do want to keep this kit looking pristine, I do recommend those. Besides having to take a little bit of extra time on the pink plastic, this builds up perfectly. The plastic on the other parts, the darker parts, which are almost a browny grey, those are buttery smooth, easy to work with. It all snaps together perfectly, all the fits are amazing. The plastic layers up very nicely in some areas, especially in the torso. When you get to the head, it is a little bit more complex, mainly because there are stickers involved. Now, these stickers need to stick onto the yellow section inside of the head. It's either use stickers or paint them yourself. And I did find while assembling the head, the stickers kind of get in the way of the plastic attaching together, which can damage the stickers. So the head is a little bit tricky. So, you know, take your time. So yeah, not quite as impressive as what we've seen with the Gundam Rubris and the Gundam Aerial, but it's still a very nice kit, especially for a bulky one. So now jumping into the aesthetics, and this is what it looks like once it's snapped together with a little bit of extra effort. So I'm going to wind back a little bit just to what this looks like straight built, just in case that's exactly what you plan to do. So now jumping into the full 360 spin of what this kit looks like straight built. I did snip out a lot of this just double snipping. I didn't actually start using the gun primer tools till a little bit later on, so you'll see there is a lot of marking on the surface of the pink plastic. This is some tricky plastic and will need some real delicate care and attention. Besides that though, the plastics in here are quite impressive. That pink is high gloss, which really does contrast quite nicely with the darker colors we have in here, which are almost in a matte. All the various sections that are made out of the brownish gray, or should I say the grayish brown, which are on the forearm, the different aspects of the frame that you can see, the feet, the knees, around the crotch and the chest, that is all a velvety, nice, matte plastic. I will mention there is a lot of nice detailing on here, like vents and whatnot, but these do look a little bit lost because they are molded in the exact same color plastic as the, well, rest of the armor itself. This is color accurate, however, but it does look a little bit plain. I highly recommend, as usual, to panline your kit. And before I actually panelline this and throw on some top coat, I will mention that there are some pretty wicked mold lines on the face of this particular kit around what you could only call its jaw on the sides of its head. So those I would also recommend cleaning up because they are quite distracting when you're getting close to the head. But anyway, as for the final touches I did put onto this kit, it's very simple. I used some grey and black flow type panel liners, and then I finished it off with Mr. Hobby Flat Matte Top Coat. And that is how I got this. So finally now into a 360 spin of what this looks like after the lining and the top coat. To me, this really brings it to the next level. However, I will mention some people might not be too happy about the fact that the matte top coat will dull the shine that was on the actual pink. So I will mention there are other top coats out there, so if you want to use gloss, semi-gloss, or matte, or a mix of them to actually change up the different textures, you can do that too. But this is what I like to see. So without a single doubt, Guel's Dilanza right here is one absolutely flamboyant, over-the-top mecha. This is almost like this series' answer to the Dom. It even almost has the Dom-style colors. We've got that crazy pink instead of a purple, but besides that, this has all the thickness in all of the right places. The detailing on here is fantastic. The panel lining will bring all of that out. I will mention we do have some pretty wicked seam lines up the sides of the legs. This is not unusual for a non-main mobile suit when it's released as a Gundam model kit, but you may want to fill those in or clean them up or only display it looking from the front. I have to admit, the actual use of stickers on the eyes on this is a bit of a disappointment. It really isn't all that bad when it comes to actual color correcting stickers, but they are quite noticeable, so you may want to invest in some shiny turquoise paint. We've got some absolutely over-the-top design elements here with the crest on the head, that big old plume sticking out the top, those massive blades pointing into the air around back, the huge, completely posable shoulder shields, and the overall ridiculous thick legs to narrow waist, huge upper body proportions. This is ridiculous. We've got a massive back skirting armor too, and I'm going to mention spoilers here a little bit, so if you don't want to spoil anything from The Witch from Mercury, you might want to pause or skip ahead now, but this is way too awesome looking to get absolutely cut to bits in episode 1. But hey, the upgrade looks pretty cool too. If not, even better. So now jumping into the accessories, and here's absolutely everything else that comes inside of the box with Guel's Dilanza. First off, we've got that absolutely massive beam Partisan, we've got the beam torch, and we've got the beam rifle as well. And just like we've been seeing with this line so far, all we get is the one set of hands, and that is the pair of hands that are attached right now. These are just a general use pair of holding hands, so nothing special about them. There is absolutely no other hands included in the box for poses or anything like that, no widespread, unique of any kind, just these. So now jumping into the weapons here with a little bit of a bang, because this thing can glow like nobody's business. Anyway, winding up a little bit, and what it says in the instructions about this right here, the beam Partisan, is that this is a melee weapon option for the Dilanza. A polearm which can generate high convergence rate beam blades extending from one end. For a melee weapon, it boasts broad effective attack range. According to the instructions, not really episode 1 though. But yeah, when it actually comes to what we get inside of the box here, this is a green effect part attached into a pole made out of 2 parts. The green effect part does look fantastic. I will mention this has been matte top coated just like the rest of the kit, but I will mention one big issue with this is we do have a massive gaping hole right here round back. This is a cost saving measure by Bandai, so you know, if you want to fill this, you can fill it yourself, but you will have to paint it, etc, or you could just make sure it's never facing forward, which is a bit lame. Getting into the hands is simple enough, just pop off the back of the hand like so, pop the shaft into the hand like this, and then you can get posing. We'll mention this is a round shaft in a square peg hole hand, so it does mean this can rotate in the hand sometimes, but I've never found any issues with that actually happening. Now, the coolest aspect about green effect parts when it comes to Bandai kits is they do fluoresce. I don't even have a UV light, I'm just using a LED Philips Hue lamp. That's it, just set to blue light and this thing is glowing like nobody's business. I will mention that the overall ridiculous glow you're seeing right now is helped by the fact that this is matte top coated, which does help diffuse the light that it is fluorescing, but it will still look almost as good just out of box under blue light, but that matte top coat really does make it shine. This holds onto it fine. I've tried it in multiple poses, including both hands. This didn't roll inside the hands at all on me, and it poses perfect. Sure, you've got that little hole in the rear, but as long as you have this posed right, you will never ever see it. And this is a pretty cool weapon, especially that big glowing piece up top. I will also mention that you're able to remove the beam effect from the top of it to show it when it doesn't have the beam activated, but there is nowhere on board the suit in order to store this when it is not in use. So the next melee weapon we have in here is the beam torch. Once again, absolutely glows underneath blue or black light. As for what it says in the instructions about this, it's a melee weapon common to all Dilanza units, with a broad beam blade. When not in use, it is stored in the weapon dock inside of the shield. So yeah, this is a simple weapon, just a simple handle with a beam blade inside of it, which of course you can take out for when it is not in use. And you can actually see in there what this blade will look like, or the green effect parts will look like when they are not top coated. They don't glow quite as much, and it's not as nice of a diffuse glow, so I recommend hitting them with a matte top. Attaching it into the hand is super simple, it just slides on in just like so easier than the big old Partisan. And when this is in a pose, it looks absolutely ridiculously good. This is an awesome take on a beam saber. It's nice, unique, different, and again, that plastic is kicking ass. So just like it said in the instructions, this can be stored when not in use. So all you have to do is pop it out of the hand, pop the beam blade off like this, and in underneath both of the shield units up on the shoulders, there are these little rack segments. You just slide it on like so, and it is stored away flush when you close it up. And also pro tip about this kit, don't handle it by the crest, that won't work out. So the final weapon we have in here is the single long-range weapon that we have, which is the beam rifle. Back to the instructions here, and it says a standard sidearm developed for mobile suit units by G-Witich Heavy Machinery. In addition to its burst attack, it boasts several other firing modes. Now when it comes to this actual rifle right here, this is a weapon I've definitely done a full 180 turn on my opinion with. At first, I thought this was really well a letdown. It's just two pieces of plastic that attach together like so, with a little bit of a sticker for the lens, and we have a magazine too. But after looking at this more and more, getting it in the hand, this is a really cool design. The flat aspect to it actually makes it seem more portable, maybe even more high-tech. And the detail on this really does pop once you finally do get a little bit of lining on top of it. This does have a removable magazine like I mentioned, and just like we would have seen before, we can store this away under the shoulder armor, so we can have a melee weapon up in one shoulder and a long range in the other. This is a really cool unit right here. One really awesome aspect about this kit is you can actually store the magazines in this little segment underneath the shoulders as well. Now, this kit only comes with the one magazine, but I assume the more Dilanzas you buy, the more magazines you'll get. It would have been cool if they included a couple of extra just to pose in there, or stick in there, or to have in different kind of combinations on the kit, but you only do get the one at a time. But it does keep it out of the way when it is stored in there. That is what both weapons look like stored up in the shoulders, and that's a really awesome gimmick. So finally now onto the articulation, and once again this is a full plastic build, so nothing will drop at all. Everything is rock solid and tight like it should be. Maybe even a little bit too tight in some areas, especially the neck right here. So this is a little bit hard to actually access because of the big crest, and the neck joint is super tight. We do have side to side in here. There isn't really any upwards looking, so you're not going to really get any flying forward poses per se. You can look downwards ever so slightly, but a little bit on the limited side. And do not try to turn it using the crest, like I have. Just like we've seen in previous G-Witich releases, this has great shoulders. In the torso itself, we have this almost drawer kind of effect, which allows the arms to move towards the front like so. It's a ball joint, so we've got the full shoulder roll, full 360-degree spin. The shoulder armor actually moves independently to the arm, so that can get out of the way, so you can raise the arm up good and high. The spike shields up on the shoulder, these are fantastic when it comes to articulation. We've got a hinge which allows them to move up and down like so. We've got a peg which allows them to rotate towards the front and out to the back. Then finally we have a mechanism in the actual shoulder armor itself which allows them to rotate the full 360-degree spin. So we've got multiple points of articulation here. These are easy to pop off, so if you don't want them on, they can pop off like so. In the actual arm, we've got a little bit of a pivot in the shoulder itself, which moves it out of the way of the arm. The full 360 bicep swivel, a very nice elbow bend, which moves the elbow a little bit, so that's very nice. And finally, we've got the standard ball joint wrist, which gives us flexion, extension, and the full rotation. The engineering in the torso is absolutely fantastic. We've got a nice ab crunch out to the front, which is smooth and strong. We've got a side-to-side crunch as well, plenty there. And finally, we do have the full 360-degree spin, all of which rock solid. When it comes to the skirting armor, the front skirting can move up and down like so. It is connected on the runner, but you can snip them apart to get independent movement. Round back, we've got one hell of a premium butt flap with up and down hinge movement like this, and these two side panels can actually flare up on hinges too, which is a very nice addition. I will mention we also have another premium aspect to the butt flap because that is double layered, so we do have some grey plastic inside that, giving it a real heft and thickness, but that does not move on over to those flappy bits either. Those are hollow on the inside. Onto the legs now, and the hip is just a single peg into a whole joint, so there is no mechanisms or dropping mechanism here. When it comes to the kicks, there's the kick out to the front, which is quite good. I will mention it does flare out from the body a little bit when you do this due to the design of the front skirts. They don't actually move out of the way of the legs at all. The leg kind of just goes around them. There it is out to the back, so pretty good too. When it comes to the splits, we can get a decent splits here. Just make sure that the torso is lined up correctly, that the big armor lips at the top of the legs can actually slot in underneath, and you'll get a decent enough split for a big boy like this. We do have a bit of a rotation gimmick as well up here, so that does mean the leg can rotate at this point ever so nicely. It can't go the whole way around, but pretty decent. Moving down into the actual leg itself, and there is the bend at the knee, which is okay. It's quite blocked by how thick the armor is on this kit, but again, chunky boy. Down to the ankle, and we've first off got a ball joint up top, which allows rotation and the actual ball joint roll inside of that. We've got a pivot in the joint above that. If you actually angle the ball joint above in the opposite direction to what you pivot, you'll get a whole lot more out of it. And when we get this slapped down the ground for the functional movement test, there it is to the front, which isn't great. There is absolutely zero to the back here, and when you go to the side, this is actually pretty good, so the pivot is quite decent. Lastly, then we do have a bit of a toe bend here in its big ol' hoof-like foot. So finally throwing into the pose we usually do to test out that articulation, and on the most part I'm quite impressed for how thick of a boy this particular kit right here is. Usually when it comes to something like a Dom or a Gelgoog or something similar like that, we don't get a lot at all. This actually pulls off quite a bit. Sure, it is limited a lot in the ankles, the knees, mainly the legs compared to anything else, but what we do get in the end kind of suits the weight and the overall aesthetic of the kit. And once you actually throw those big old shield binders up onto the shoulders, that adds an extra dynamic flair to it when it is in poses. So even though it is mildly limited or somewhat limited, it still works out well, but you will not get crazy over the top acrobatic poses out of it. So anyway, when it comes to this kit, I'm going to go with silver tier. I was actually thinking about gold, but the more I tossed it up, the more I found more flaws and aspects that really do detract from it. In the end, I will mention it is a fantastic kit and I do highly recommend it. It's not nearly as good as the last two Gundams we saw, which were the Gundam Rubris and the Gundam Aerial. This is definitely not as high-end and fantastic as those. However, it is still brilliant by high-grade standards. It is a full plastic build. It's easy to put together, but there are a lot of negative aspects. Aesthetically, when it comes to the negatives, it marks up a lot when you're building it. You have to be very, very careful. There's huge seams up the legs, there's mold lines all over the face and on various other elements of the body, and we do have a pretty bad sticker for the eyes. When it comes to the weaponry, the only down point I feel is that big old hollow point in the Partisan, and when it comes to the articulation, it is a little bit limited in the knees and the ankles. But when it comes to the good points, aesthetically this looks phenomenal. It looks over the top cool and is a nice, different take on the old Dom kind of look. We've got some big chunky limbs, and over the top flamboyant feather on its head. Big spikes up back, and nothing really looks like this. Finally then, when it comes to the good points about the articulation, this is built like a tank, looks great even though the poses are somewhat limited because it is such a bulky boy and poses just the right way for such a mobile suit. So yeah, silver tier, it needs a little bit of effort out of the box, but I still highly recommend it as an awesome high-grade kit. Anyway, if you do want one of your own, link in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to stay up to date with Gundam releases, and as always, I will see you next time.